Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to start with the new topic that is anti-hyperlipidemic drugs. Okay, so these particular drugs they also come under the topic that is drugs which are acting on the cardiovascular system. Okay, so as the name suggests, hyperlipidemic, anti-hyperlipidemic. So what do we mean by this? There is increased levels of lipids in the blood, and these drugs they reduce these lipid levels of the blood. Okay, so one disease which we have studied in detail that involves increased amount of lipids in the blood, that is the atherosclerosis. Okay, and the atherosclerosis, as we know, it leads to the variety of cardiovascular disorders. That's why this particular topic is considered under the unit that is the drugs acting on cardiovascular system. Okay, so let's begin with the thing. So hyperlipidemia, the general consideration. So what is hyperlipidemia? It is elevated cholesterol levels. It is a medical condition which is characterized by increase in one or more plasma lipids, which include the triglycerides, that is TGs, the cholesterol esters, the phospholipids, and or plasma lipoproteins, which include very low density lipoprotein, that is VLDLC, and low density lipoproteins, that is LDLC, and there is reduced high density lipoprotein levels. Okay, so what we got from this, that there is elevation in the levels of most of the lipids and lipid carrying particles, and there is decrease in levels of one kind of lipid carrying particle. Okay, so which lipid levels are increased? The first one is triglyceride, second one is cholesterol, third one is cholesterol esters, then fourth is the phospholipids, then we have the plasma lipoproteins, in which it includes LDL and VLDL, but there is uh, a reduced circulating levels of HDL, that is high density lipoprotein. When we have studied in atherosclerosis, we have actually focused on these two, that is LDL and the HDL. There we had called LDL as the bad cholesterol or bad lipid, and this HDL as good. Okay, so here the amount of this good lipoprotein, that is HDL, it reduces, and of that bad lipoprotein, that is VLDL and LDL, it increases. Okay, so hypercholesterolemia and hypertriglyceridemia, they are the main causes of atherosclerosis, which is strongly related to CVD. So when we say we have observed there is condition of hyperlipidemia, we are basically talking about these two ingredients or these two fats whose percentage in the blood increase, that is cholesterol and the triglyceride. Okay, and it is very well known association between the high levels of these two things and the atherosclerosis. Okay, and if there is presence of atherosclerosis, then it leads to the cardiovascular disorder. CVD stands for cardiovascular disorder. So the cardiovascular disorders that are that happen due to the presence of atherosclerosis are called as atherosclerotic cardiovascular disorder. So it is short form of it is ASCVD. Okay, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So the hyperlipidemia, it may be due to lifestyle factors. Okay, so example is lack of exercise or diet which contains excess saturated fats. So it's in like most of the cases, this hyperlipidemia is associated with the lifestyle factors only. Okay, so hyperlipidemia can also result from inherited defect in the lipoprotein metabolism, or more commonly from combination of genetic and lifestyle factors. So as I said, in most of the cases, the lifestyle factors will cause the hyperlipidemia, but sometimes if a person is predisposed inheritedly, then also that person will get the hyperlipidemia. So we are going to see in next slide which are those types of uh, hyperlipidemia and what are the causes of it. Okay, so in the left side chart, it is mentioned that how the lipids, they are broken down into the gastrointestinal tract and how they are circulated in the body. Okay, so we in small intestine, let's start with the small intestine. We have the nascent chylomicrons. So they carry the lipids in the form of mature chylomicrons, and here you can read that the intestinal mucosa, it secretes a triglyceride rich chylomicrons, which are produced primarily from the dietary lipids. The liver secretes the triglyceride rich VLDL particles. So these chylomicrons, once they are released from the small intestine, they get into the capillaries. Okay, blood capillaries. Okay, so when they get into the blood capillaries with the means of lipoprotein lipase enzyme, they, what contents of the chylomicrons, they are converted into the free fatty acids. Okay, so where these free fatty acids may get formed in the tissues, example they have given is of adipose. So let's read this second point. So it is extracellular lipoprotein lipase, which is activated by apoC2, degrades the TG, that is triglyceride, in the CM and the VLDL. Okay, so CM stands for the chylomicron and VLDL is very low density lipoprotein. So what happens next? So here we have two links over. Okay, so this VLDL, as it unloads its fat into these particular tissues, it gets converted into the LDL. Okay, so this LDL, it has now linked to the two things, that is extrahepatic tissue, and it is connected to the liver by these two arrows. Okay, so let's see what happens in extrahepatic tissue of the LDL. These LDLs, they bind to specific receptors on extrahepatic tissue and on the liver, where they are endocytosed. That means once these LDL, they bind to these receptors, which can be present outside the liver or on the liver, then these LDL particles, they are taken inside. Okay, so they move inside because of it. Okay, so what happens to the chylomicron remnant? Why it is called as chylomicron remnant? Because the main constituent of chylomicron is the fat. Okay, so as it unloads its fat into the tissues, whatever remaining behind, it is just the lipoprotein particle. Okay, So it is like a empty vesicle. So that's why it is called as chylomicron remnant. So this chylomicron remnant, it binds to specific receptor onto the liver where they are endocytosed. So just like that of LDL, this chylomicron remnant, it is also taken inside into the liver. Okay, so once it is taken inside into the liver, again processing will happen onto the LDL as well as chylomicron remnant. And uh, in case of emergency or in case of need, this particular process LDL and chylomicron remnant particles will get converted into VLDL, which consists of the triglycerides, and then it will be released from the liver, and it will again enter into the blood vessel, and it will unload its triglycerides into the tissues where it is needed. Okay, so this is how the cycle, this is how the various VLDL, LDL, and chylomicron remnant, they chylomicrons, they are related. Okay, so LDL, they are basically moving towards the liver. The VLDL, they move towards the tissues. The chylomicron, they move or they travel towards the tissue, and the chylomicron remnants, they travel towards the liver. Okay, so understand the direction of the arrows. So now we have different types of uh, hyperlipidemic conditions. So we have type 1, which is familial hyperchylomicronemia. So what it is associated with? It is associated with increase in chylomicron levels. So we have second type, that is type 2A. So it is familiar hypercholesterolemia. Okay. So in this condition, there is increase in the LDL levels. So we have type 2B, which is familial combined or mixed hyperlipidemia. So in here, there is both increase in the VLDL and LDL levels. So we have type 3, which is familial dis beta lipoproteinemia. So again, in this type, there is increase in the LDL concentration. Then we have type 4, that is familial hypertriglyceridemia. Okay, so there is increase in the VLDL levels. And we have type 5, where there is familial mixed hypertriglyceridemia. So here there is increase in the levels of the chylomicrons as well as the VLDL particles. Okay, so as I said earlier, that this hyperlipidemia, it has, or there are two contributory factors to it. First contributory factor is the lifestyle factors, and the second factor is the family history. So all these types which are mentioned over here, that is type 1, type 2A, type 2B, type 3, type 4, and type 5, all of them, they are inherited types. That means a genetic predisposition is there for these particular types. If there is no genetic predisposition, then we can't classify or we can't enlist such types. Okay, so moving forward to the treatment goals, simple as that. As there is a elevation of the cholesterol ester, triglycerides, LDL, VLDL, we have to reduce all of them, and we have to increase the HDL, that is good cholesterol. Okay, so that will be our treatment goals. So let's just read. Plasma lipids, they consist mostly of lipoproteins, which are spherical complexes of lipids and specific proteins. So as per the name, Lipoprotein, partly lipid, partly protein. So clinically important lipoprotein listed in decreasing order of atherogenicity. That means this list or this order, it will determine their propensity to cause the atherosclerosis. So we have the LDL at the first level. That means mostly it will be the LDL that will cause the atherosclerosis. Then we have very low density lipoprotein, that is VLDL. Then we have chylomicrons, and lastly we have the HDL. So that's why HDL is called as good and LDL is called as bad. Okay, so the occurrence of the CVD is positively associated with high total cholesterol and has even stronger correlation with elevated LDL-C. So in contrast to the LDL-C, high levels of HDL-C, they have been associated with decreased risk for the CVD. So this particular statement, it comes from the years of research. Sorry. So this is proved thing that if there is increased level of HDL, then it is good. Then there will be less probability that the person will suffer from the atherosclerosis. But if there is increased level of LDL-C, then causal relationship between the LDL-C and the atherosclerosis, it is well established. Okay, so reduction of LDL-C is the primary goal of cholesterol lowering therapy. Okay, so whatever drugs we give, they try to reduce the levels of circulating LDL. Okay, so we have cholesterol guidelines, and what they say, that the need for anti-hyperlipidemic drug therapy should be determined based on an assessment of risk for ASCVD. Okay, ASCVD, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, in conjunction with evaluation of lipoprotein levels, as hyperlipidemia per se does not have any obvious symptoms. This is very important. Okay, even if you have the hyperlipidemia, you won't even know that you have it. Why? Because it doesn't produce any symptoms. But the problem is that when it produces the symptoms, it is already too late. That's why the assessment of the ASCVD, it needs to be done. Like the lifestyle a person has, it needs to be evaluated. The BMI, it needs to be calculated. BMI is body mass index. Okay, so it is like a ratio of height to the weight. Okay, it needs to be calculated, and depending on that, we have to determine whether the person will suffer from this ASCVD or not. Okay, so also we have to add up the lipid profile. We have to do the lipid profile of that particular person. Okay, and from that lipid profile, we get to know whether certain lipid levels, they are elevated or not. If they are at normal, then it's okay, but we have to monitor it. Okay, so this hyperlipidemia, it is usually discovered during the routine examination or until it reaches the danger state of myocardial ischemia or stroke. So it is said that it is discovered during routine examination. Okay, routine examination, if a person uh, gets the medicals done every year, so during that, uh, the person may get to know that he has that hyperlipidemia problem. But there are very few person who do this, the routine health checkup, routine test. We will we will do the health test or health checkup only when it is necessary or only when we fall ill. Okay, but uh, it is very important to do as we pass on or as we cross a certain age limit to do medical checkup every year. Okay, and it will reveal the health status of the person. So uh, we have anti-hyperlipidemic drugs, and they are classified as the HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors. Then we have niacin, we have fibrates, we have bile acid sequestrants, we have cholesterol absorption inhibitors, then we have omega-3 fatty acids, and then lastly we have a new class of drug, that is PCSK9 inhibitors. Okay, so today we will only study about the HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors. Other drugs we will study in next lecture. Okay, so the HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors, which are also called as statins. Okay, why they are called as statins? Because the suffix they have, it is stat. Okay, and it is one of the most important drug in the therapy of the hyperlipidemia. So these are the examples of it. That is, the first one is simvastatin, then we have atorvastatin, then we have fluvastatin, then we have lovastatin, we have rosuvastatin, then pravastatin, and pitavastatin. Okay, so let's study about it. So HMG coenzyme A reductase. What is this enzyme? So it is 3-hydroxy 3-methyl glutaryl coenzyme A. So this HMG stands for this hydroxy H, then methyl M, and glutaryl G. So this is HMG coenzyme A. So these coenzyme A reductase inhibitors, which are commonly known as the statins, what they do, they lower the levels of the circulating LDL, and it results in substantial reduction in coronary events and also death from the CVD, that is cardiovascular disease. So the therapeutic benefits of it includes the atherosclerotic plaque stabilization, which is very important, then improvement of coronary endothelial function, then inhibition of platelet thrombus formation, and lastly the vascular anti-inflammatory activity. Okay, so they are first line treatment for patients with elevated risk of ASCVD to reduce occurrence of ASCVD events. Okay, so this is very important that if we have done a routine checkup of a patient and we found that there is elevated levels of the lipoproteins in his blood, and also when we did general physical checkup or general physical analysis, we got to know that this person is susceptible to the effects of the, or he may suffer from the problems of atherosclerosis. Then in such patients we have to start with these particular drugs. Okay, but also these drugs are associated with development of diabetes. Okay, so we have to also check when we will do the health checkup. That time we also determine the blood sugar levels. So if the blood sugar levels of that particular person, they are well within the limits, then in that case we can start with these drugs. Otherwise, if the person's blood sugar level are at the borderlines, then we have to avoid this drug because this drug is known to develop the diabetes in the patients who are borderline diabetic patients. Okay, borderline, why I'm saying that, they are not actually diabetics, they are more of pre-diabetic patients. Okay, so in those patients, these particularly drugs will cause the diabetes. Okay, so mechanism of action, these drugs are competitive inhibitors of the enzyme, that is HMG coenzyme A reductase, which is a rate limiting step in the cholesterol synthesis. Okay, so by inhibiting the de novo cholesterol synthesis that takes place in liver, they deplete intracellular supply of the cholesterol. Okay, so depletion of intracellular cholesterol, it causes cell to increase the number of cell surface LDL receptors that can bind and internalize LDL-C. Okay, so thus plasma cholesterol is reduced by both decreased cholesterol synthesis and increased LDL catabolism. Okay, so what they do, they reduce the cholesterol synthesis that is taking place in the cells, and as there is decreased cholesterol synthesis, the cells, they are deprived of the cholesterol, and hence they take up more number of LDL particles which are circulating by by expressing the LDL receptor on its surface, and by it means it reduces the circulating levels of the LDLs, and thus it acts as the anti-hyperlipidemic drug. So the order of potency is that rosuvastatin and atorvastatin, they are equally potent in reducing the LDL particles, and otherwise the drugs which are mentioned over here, they are arranged as per their decreasing order of potency. So rosuvastatin and atorvastatin, they are the most potent ones, followed by pitavastatin, followed by simvastatin, followed by lovastatin, followed by pravastatin, and lastly the fluvastatin. Okay, so this is the mechanism of action of the HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitor. So if you can see in the step 1, the statins inhibit HMG CoA reductase, which leads to the decreased concentration of cholesterol within the cell. Okay, so as there is decrease in the concentration of cholesterol within the cell, it stimulates synthesis of the LDL receptor. Okay, so these LDL receptors, they are expressed onto the surface as it is shown over here, and this increased number of LDL receptor, it promotes uptake of LDL from the blood. So as uptake of LDL increases, the low intracellular cholesterol decreases the secretion of the VLDL. Okay, so these cholesterol levels, it has two effects, as you can see. Uh, one is the positive effect and other is negative. Positive effect is that increasing expression of the LDL receptor, and the negative effect it has is that it reduces the secretion of the VLDL. So the therapeutic uses of these drugs are used to lower the risk of ASCVD events for the patients in the 4 statin benefit groups. Statins are effective in lowering plasma cholesterol levels in all types of hyperlipidemias. However, patients who are homozygous for the familial hypercholesterolemia, they lack the LDL receptors and therefore benefit much less from the treatment with these drugs. So we have to see whether the person is suffering from this, that is familial hypercholesterolemia because there is lack of LDL receptors. Okay, so the pharmacokinetics, it is lovastatin and simvastatin. They are the lactones which are hydrolyzed to the active drugs. So the remaining statins, they are all administered in their active form only. Okay, so the absorption of statins is variable, which varies from the 30% to the 85%, which is following the oral administration. All statins, they are metabolized by the same enzyme system, that is cytochrome P450 system of enzyme, except that of the pravastatin. Excretion takes place principally through the bile and the feces, but some urinary elimination it also occurs. So adverse effects, there is elevated liver enzymes because of statin therapy. Therefore, liver function should be evaluated prior to the starting the therapy, and if a patient has symptoms consistent with liver dysfunction. Okay, so myopathy and rhabdomyolysis. Rhabdomyolysis is nothing but the disintegration of the skeletal muscle, which is a rare side effect. They have also been reported. Okay, so in most cases of rhabdomyolysis, the patients had renal insufficiency, then vitamin D deficiency, then hypothyroidism, then also advanced age, they were female, or they were taking the drugs that increase the risk of muscle adverse effects such as azole antifungals, protease inhibitors, cyclosporin, erythromycin, gemfibrozin, or niacin. So the simvastatin, it is metabolized by CYP3A4 enzyme, and the inhibitors of this enzyme may increase the risk of rhabdomyolysis. Okay, so why it is said that the rhabdomyolysis, it is a rare adverse effect? Because for this adverse effect to show up in the patient needs to have certain conditions, and if the presence of these conditions is there, then only it will lead to the rhabdomyolysis. Otherwise, there are very less chances. So what are these conditions? They are just mentioned, that is renal insufficiency, vitamin D deficiency, hypothyroidism, advanced age, female, and drugs that increase the risk of muscle adverse effect. So all of these factors coming together, it is very rare condition. That's why the rhabdomyolysis will the occurrence of rhabdomyolysis will also be rare. Okay, so we should stop over here only. As other drugs we will study in the next lecture. Okay, so thank you, and that's it.